The film is based on the true story of the 1993 Bricks gold mining scandal, following a reckless entrepreneur and a geologist in Indonesia who deceived Wall Street, skyrocketing their company's stock from 25 cents to $200 and making them billionaires. Wells, a young man from a mining family, was prepared for leadership but faced a downturn after his father's death, with the stock plummeting back to 25 cents. Desperate for investors, he made countless calls from a bar until a venture capital firm agreed to meet, but the meeting ended in embarrassment. After a night of heavy drinking, he dreamt of Indonesia's mineral-rich peaks and impulsively sold his girlfriend's gold jewelry to fund his trip there. Upon arriving in Indonesia, Wells aimed to find Mike, a geologist who had introduced the volcanic arc theory but had fallen from grace due to failed explorations. After connecting over their setbacks, they decided to partner on a gold mine. They reached a mountain peak where Mike believed gold was present, which matched a vision Wells had, boosting his confidence in Mike. He quickly signed a 50-50 partnership agreement, with Wells securing funding and Mike searching for gold. Back home, Wells raised $260,000 from small investors, bought drilling equipment, and hired local workers. However, the gold samples consistently underperformed, depleting their funds and leading to worker departures. During a storm, Wells fell ill with malaria, leaving only Mike by his side. Before losing consciousness, he gave Mike his last $2,300, pleading for assurance that he wouldn't die with nothing. Mike then learned the workers were struggling with water shortages. Weeks went by, and Wells finally regained consciousness. Mike brought him encouraging news. The test results indicated that their excavation site contained 8 ounces of gold per ton, signifying the discovery of a substantial gold mine. The two men embraced in joy, celebrating as if the treasure was within their grasp. Wells promptly returned home to inform the investors, and by the next morning, a wave of celebration swept through the community. The publisher of Gold Digger magazine sought an interview with him, which rapidly disseminated his story. The following day, a financial mogul reached out to Wells, someone he had previously been unable to meet. During Wells's earlier visit to the mogul's office, he had encountered 2 of the mogul's subordinates, which had been a blow to his pride. This time, he insisted that these 2 managers be directly accountable for his account and available at all times. Wells then relocated to a larger office space. Previously, his company's stock had been valued at just 25 cents per share, but following the announcement of the gold mine, the stock began to rise dramatically. Even Brown Thomas and Company in New York expressed interest in acquiring Wells's company, although they harbored doubts about the legitimacy of the gold mine. They dispatched a few subordinates to conduct an investigation, and Mike personally led them on a tour. The group attempted to pan for gold in the river but initially found nothing. Fortunately, Mike discovered a gold nugget in the river and presented it to the group, dispelling their skepticism. Following that day, Wells's stock soared even higher, and all the investors rejoiced. The narrative was merely commencing. Wells took his girlfriend, Kay, to view opulent residences and ultimately made a purchase. They celebrated exuberantly at a bar, during which he engaged in flirtation with a blonde woman. Kay witnessed this and confronted him, resulting in a significant argument that led to their separation the following day. During a financing meeting, a major corporation proposed $300 million for his mine, prompting Wells to erupt in fury. He expressed that mining for gold was his aspiration, questioning the purpose of life if one were to relinquish their dreams. The investment mogul observed his departure, beginning to hold a newfound respect for him, especially considering that in 1964, $300 million represented a fortune sufficient for several lifetimes. Meanwhile, in Indonesia, a contingent of military officers abruptly intervened to halt Mike and the workers from extracting gold and to deport them. Upon learning this, Wells realized that the frustrated financial mogul had conspired with the Indonesian military to forcibly seize control of the mine. Once this information became public, Wells's stock experienced a nearly 50-point decline, as they could not withstand the might of capital. This time, it appeared to be the end for them. In a state of drunken despair at the bar, Wells felt he had lost everything and reached his lowest point. However, Mike approached him and revealed that while searching for copper mines, he had actually been seeking bauxite. The journey had been challenging, and he had become sidetracked, only to find himself at the very location of the copper mine. Wells replied, "You were in pursuit of bauxite and discovered copper. I was in search of gold and found a friend." He smiled, sensing that Mike must have a new strategy in mind. The following day, Mike introduced Wells to Danny, the son of the Indonesian president. Danny had long aspired to create his own legacy, yet his previous endeavors had consistently ended in failure. He believed that if he could successfully engage in gold mining, it would finally capture his father's attention. However, Danny was inherently distrustful. He warned Wells that if he dared to touch a tiger's head, he would agree to partner with him in the mining venture. Determined to prove his courage, Wells ventured to Danny's wildlife park under the cover of darkness. Upon entering the tiger's enclosure, the animal roared fiercely, yet Wells remained undeterred. He cautiously approached the tiger, extending his hand until he ultimately touched its head. This act of remarkable bravery secured his partnership with the president's son. Danny subsequently assisted Wells in acquiring the necessary permits and formalized an agreement with the Indonesian government, granting Wells a 15% stake while the government retained 85%. News of Wells's collaboration with the Indonesian government rapidly circulated through Wall Street, propelling him back to prominence. He was honored with a prestigious gold medal from the National Mining Association, a moment of joy as he, a member of a mining dynasty, finally restored his family's honor and business. While Wells celebrated on stage, Mike discreetly exited the ceremony, but the narrative was far from concluded. The following day, Wells was met by a throng of irate investors at the company's entrance. Still reeling from the previous day's festivities, he was oblivious to the unfolding crisis. Confronted by the investors and their myriad accusations, Wells succumbed to despair. It was revealed that Mike, as a geologist, had always been aware that no gold existed. He had bribed the local testing agency and falsified the samples by mixing in gold powder, orchestrating the entire deception. Mike had already disappeared after liquidating his shares for a total of $164 million. The Indonesian Prince Danny had similarly converted the majority of his shares into cash. In essence, the gold mining company, valued in the billions, had vanished overnight, leaving investors stripped of their funds and investment firms facing losses exceeding $1 billion. Wells, in this scenario, not only gained nothing but also became the primary suspect in this extensive fraud case. The FBI swiftly located Wells and brought him in for questioning as part of the investigation. He recounted the entire narrative to the FBI. At that moment, another piece of information emerged. Mike had sold his stocks abroad for a total of $164 million. Once the truth surfaced, Mike was apprehended by the local Indonesian military and was set to be extradited to a U.S. prison. However, during transport on a military helicopter, Mike leaped from the aircraft and perished. Wells was incredulous at the unfolding events, believing that the $164 million could significantly benefit Indonesia, and he suspected the Indonesian government might be complicit in the scheme. The FBI agents reported that they had discovered Mike's body, though his hands and face had been consumed, likely by wild boars. Nevertheless, they confirmed it was indeed Mike. Furthermore, Danny and Indonesia had divested many stocks, further enriching the Suharto family. The only lingering question was whether Wells had any involvement in the fraud. Wells vehemently asserted that his focus had always been on revitalizing his family legacy and pursuing his aspirations, rather than on financial gain. For him, the gold mine symbolized a dream, not merely a source of cash. Had he been motivated by money, he would have accepted the $300 million acquisition offer from the financial mogul. He had nearly succumbed to malaria while striving to mine for gold and had spent his last resources to fulfill his dream of encountering a tiger. After enduring weeks in a coma due to malaria, Mike stumbled upon a gold mine. Wells expressed his frustration with a society that disregarded the truth, where greed reigned supreme and individuals were solely focused on wealth. He mocked those blinded by avarice, questioning why they did not investigate the authenticity of the gold if it were indeed counterfeit. Unbeknownst to him, many had already amassed their fortunes, and he remained oblivious to Mike's deceit. Wells maintained that he had given up everything, emphasizing that his true passion lay not in money but in the quest for gold, his ultimate aspiration. The federal agents ceased recording after a lengthy discussion, feeling increasingly confident that Wells was not implicated in the fraud. Upon his release, he gazed at the sky, where two birds soared, and smiled as he entered a car, having lost everything. He arrived at the home of his ex-girlfriend, Kay, who greeted him with a smile and handed him several letters from the refrigerator, one of which was from Mike in Indonesia. As Wells opened the letter, he discovered the napkin outlining their 50-50 agreement, along with a check for $82 million, exactly half of the total $164 million. Wells beamed with satisfaction.